endless series of proxy battles fought by mercenaries and machines. War and its consumption of life has become a well-oiled machine.
That's a hard fail. All assets lost.
War has changed.
It most certainly has, and the more things change, the more they stay the same, which is true of the meteor that was and is Epic's Fortnite. Having launched in 2017, and then proceeding to suck all the time, money and attention of teens and streamers alike. Now, I'm not going to pretend I enjoy the game, as I do not, and that's not what I do. It's not designed for me, and that's absolutely fine. But the view is not shared by all companies making and shipping online multiplayer-based shooters, and the latest team to step forward with its take on the Royale theme could very well be the best, and certainly the one that challenges that throne come the big Xmas period, or holiday season sales if you're in America, giving us our answer on just what Treyarch had been concentrating on after my first look at BLOPS 4. Now, the reason that seemed to perform worse than expected and certainly required was this huge 100-man battle royale mode. It's also the reason we get no single player. Now, my fears from this have almost been quelled after getting a few hours this Sunday on the Pro and X versions. It is the same core engine and delivery as we saw from my previous look into the title. Adaptive VSync is used to allow the top 200 to 300 pixels to tear if the frame runs a few milliseconds over budget. These are usually accompanied by a frame drop into the next refresh cycle of 33 milliseconds, which can at some key points, with heavy alpha overdraw from clouds and zooming down to the arena, have it dip on both machines. But this is common of all these titles to an extent. Once landed, all equipment is OSP, that Metal Gear reference again, as you frantically scurry around to find your first and key weapon. So far, so PUBG. Unlike the prominent instigator of this ever popular game type, and Fortnite at launch on consoles at least, BLOPS keeps the 60 FPS target here from the start, and that super fast 40 millisecond response times, which is a key asset indeed. Even though we can see performance dips on both consoles with some rare 50 to 66 millisecond hangs at points, this is due to the much wider expanse of terrain and therefore less closer proximity of multiple enemies. This is not as often an issue here as it is in the core game style and those relatively tiny maps. Sure, the team still have work to do, and I'm sure some of these are sector stutters and streaming data points will all be improved. These do seem to affect the X more than the Pro from my test though, but it could just be an unlucky scenario during my game tests at the weekend. The average and lows between them are close enough to be unimportant outside of this close analysis and those stats below. The gap in resolution is as equal as ever, and the methods remain the same between the last time I looked at it and now. As before on the Pro, you get a 1920 by 2160 maximum rendering rate on the Pro, with the temporal AA adding to that when motion is minimal, allowing it to raise the IQ further. The width is comprised of another method, with a base width being half of this at 960, and then using, most likely, the ID buffer in the Pro to inject the missing data each frame. The vertical can also scale to a counted low of 1620 at times, and the X follows the same rule as before, with a higher base with 1440 being the lowest width, constructing a 2880 width and a low 1512 vertical, with the dynamic scaling hitting 2880 by 2160, and again that temporal AA improving it further. Performance and IQ is still very good, and I would say close enough to the last test with a much higher overall load on the engine to see that the team have concentrated most of their focus and optimizations right here. Now, I must say the impressive results from taking an engine designed for much smaller and closed off arenas are worthy of applause. This is not an open world beauty by any means, and many of the assets, textures and layouts share a great deal with the core game, but the cutbacks and compromises are intelligent and worthwhile. Shadow and light map cascades are kept short and flick in as you walk towards them. Options such as AO look to be again reduced or simplified to accommodate the much vaster geometry to contend with, and texture resolution is also reduced along with the composite materials being removed and giving elements less depth and detail at times, which is an obvious reduction to the much contested bandwidth that these consoles will struggle with, certainly at these frame rates in these open areas. Now, the trade-off here is rather than try to raise detail with more normal maps and decals, they've instead used adaptive tessellation in areas to add more detail and depth from within the hardware functions, which again reduces memory footprint and bandwidth further, but still provides details to those less flat areas or terrain. Now, character models are still well constructed, and although again are reduced in try counts and material shading, are close enough to the other game modes to be of little notice. This is a massive map though, and pop-in, shadow map range and imposters are obvious, but it is a solid update to a game that has never attempted something so monumentally different than its bread and butter. Comparisons to Fortnite are obvious, and art design aside, with a much brighter and more cartoon aesthetic of the former, appealing or repelling based on your personal preference. It is a solid looker and has a fair share of options to appease the masses, the main one being something we have not enjoyed since COD 3. Vehicles. This huge benefit to the title sets it apart from Fortnite, with shopping trolleys not really competing with jeeps, trucks and even helicopters, opening fast travel and tactical team play options. These third-person sections again have been added with now animation systems from the character models themselves, not something that's new to Call of Duty. You tend to have that for quite a few years now when you're viewing other spectators in some of the game types. Certainly the Black Ops titles have had it, so it's not a new function, but having that option within the game, you can't flick to third person whilst you're playing. The whole game is played in first person, but once in a vehicle, the whole thing is running in third person, which is again a change to the game engine in terms of gameplay, if not actually being a feature that was already present in previous titles. The fun that can be born out of these features can be a riot, and the pre-game lobby can have some stutters. It never gets bad enough to ruin the fun as you wait for it to fill up, certainly not as bad as some other games mentioned. All things play out as many other Battle Royale games you may have enjoyed, and with the team options, the vehicles and the weapon choices, along with the plethora of areas and maps to explore, this has actually been a breath of fresh air for the long-running series. Some gripes occur with pickups being slow at times and overly picky on where you target it to get it, but hopefully these can be addressed once the final game ships in October. Now, I never got a chance to test the base versions, but based on these results, I would expect those to suffer more and have equal resolution tearing and performance dips in line with what I demonstrated with the last beta. Now, I have stressed this before, and I mentioned it on the Battlefield series as well. Resolution dips are now getting to a point where there's so much sacrifice in some of those resolutions and IQ on certain lower end consoles and performance. I actually feel that you are in a handicap if you're playing against other players on the X or the PS4 and they're running on a Pro or an Xbox One S. It does feel slightly out of balance. Yes, not a huge amount, but if you're a competitive player, then I would highly recommend that if you want to get into this game and do well, certainly buy it on PC or buy it on one of the higher end consoles, because you are definitely going to struggle on these lower machines based on what I've seen so far in both Battlefield and this title on previous beta analysis. Now, Activision and Treyarch may have just pulled the rabbit out of the hat here with a new mode that is almost certain to be the go-to mode for all COD players next month. And with Battlefield still looking to be my preferred option for multiplayer treats this year, I am likely to be in a minority as the big two BR titles go head to head. I really don't think Battlefield has a chance in that battle, but we'll wait and see. Even though Fortnite wins the contest on value, you can never ever underestimate that draw of some fish and gun action. And if you guys and girls enjoyed this, you can like, subscribe and share this video where appropriate. All those things really help me immensely. You can read more detail on this and other titles from me and other people over on the Rectify Gaming website. And if you want to chat to me directly about this, games, movies, anything you want to, then follow me over on Twitter. And with that, I'm out. But take a tip from a Battle Royale amateur. If you want to climb that ladder, then stay in the damn zone. I'll catch you on the next one.
Be advised, further collapse expected. Relocate to safe zone. Outgunned, outplayed, and out of luck.